Hi, my name is Kimberly Cato. I'm the CEO and founder of ROOTS Counselling Services, where we assist people who are overwhelmed and blindsided by life-altering circumstances to transform their trauma into triumph. Thanks for stopping by.
Oh boy. So I was at home and I heard about it. So we don't have cable. We haven't had cable for several years now. I don't tap into the news, but social media has replaced that. And so I came across it on social media. And as everyone knows, George Floyd's murder, was one of many that was happening around that time. And, you know, being at home with stay-at-home orders and having this global pandemic, it was still very fresh at the time. And excuse me. It is always traumatizing and painful to hear that, you know, a fellow brother or sister, no matter where they are in the world, has been exposed and has been treated like that. But just with George Floyd, I heard accounts of what happened. I, to this day, have not seen the footage because that's just not something that I could bring myself to. And I know it happened a year ago, over a year ago, and it's still really challenging for me to talk about, because he was taken out like an animal, really. There are animals that I've seen that, you know, get treated better than him. And that's not to say that animals are less than or they're less deserving. That's absolutely not the case. But for what? Like, what was the reason that he was taken down like that? And I know, I understand why, but it's just like, at what point are we recognized as human beings, you know? And it was disheartening, to say the least, to hear about another account, another life, another body gone too soon because of systems. And when it happens like that, like in succession, one after the other, you know, there's a part of me that feels like helpless and hopeless, because it's like, what can we do to prevent this from happening again, you know? Those are some of the thoughts that I have been sitting with and grappling with for a very long time.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this space in this moment of pause and reflection on what has been the last year. For some of us, the increased awareness started the last year. For some, this has been a dialogue that happened to be captured on video in such a visceral, violent way. like Nikki, I have not watched the full video. At the time in which that happened, the execution happened, I was pregnant with my son. And there was something about hearing, witnessing, being part of that collective energy, and the connection to life lost and life happening all in that same moment, that I was very mindful and present of, right? Seeing and witnessing execution live on TV does something to our psyche, right? And unfortunately, this wasn't the first time, right? We saw Philando Castile, right? We saw Mr. Sterling, right? We saw all of those names in the past. And so for that amount of time, there was something that really impacted us in this way, having the world shut down, having a twin pandemic happening, and the racial reckoning that was happening really caused the world to pause in a different way. And so for me, I was mindful of protecting Black joy in that moment. And especially in the moment of seeing life being taken away from someone. So as much as I didn't witness the video, I read about it, saw all of those pieces. And so I'm really mindful of how energy and space and actually taking in those images does something to us as a collective being and consciousness. Not saying it's not important to see what happens, but being mindful of how it does something to a community of folks to constantly see yourselves being executed. Right? And so I am mindful of those things. So the last year for me, I was very mindful because I was carrying life. So I now have an 11-month-old baby that was born shortly after what happened there.
Nikki, thank you for having the courage to share that and for being present with us today. Thank you.
Michael, we know Rodney King. Everybody, many of us have seen the video of Rodney King. I remember watching a video of Rodney King in my younger days. And when I was about 17 in Oakville here, I was in a restaurant with a friend, just a Burger King restaurant. And there's this gentleman, white gentleman, bald-headed guy, just looking at me while I'm ordering. And I acknowledged him. And he didn't, I wouldn't say he acknowledged me. He just continued to stare. And I went about my business, ordering my food, got my food, and turned to leave. And now the whole time I'm thinking he knows me or we know each other. So I feel kind of bad. So I said hello again. And that was the last thing that came out of my mouth before I was punched in the face. My friend, who was white, was with me. Neither one of us understood, and we just left. So then Rodney King came out, the video from Rodney King. And I remember watching that. I remember watching the court trial, and I remember not even remotely being surprised that the cops were let off. And then I watched the video with George Floyd. and I forced myself to watch every minute of it in the court, and I watched the court case, and I didn't have to force myself to watch that. When I watched it, the video of the murder, all I thought to myself was, this man doesn't even, and this man we're talking about is Chauvin, doesn't even acknowledge, has no clue. It's like, I wouldn't even say he doesn't have a clue. That's not a person he's kneeling on. That wasn't, contempt doesn't even cover it, because his face, his facial expression he was perfectly comfortable in that position with somebody dying under his knee like that. And I'm going to say that for the first time, Rodney King didn't give me this, but watching George Floyd brought me back to that moment as a 17-year-old, thinking that could be me. And I could very easily not be here right now, because it's not like I was never experienced interaction with the cops for one reason or another growing up as a kid. And so again, as Nicholas says, it seemed to wake up this call to action, and it's not a flash in the pan. I think this is something that should drive something moving forward, so that 100 years from now, these are the days where we look back at what motivated us to do what we're doing 100 years from now. That's me.
Hello, and thank you for having us. It's an honor to be part of your series. I think some awesome discussions have taken place, and I'm excited about what today and how deep, and also remembering the great man, and really what this has really been a catalyst, the loss of life, and how that has been a catalyst for change. Where was I? I was at home, and I could hear I watch the news every day, being from a film journalism background, but a passionate lover of therapy. It was important for me to stay connected. But when we're talking about a loss of life, when we're talking about yet again another image of Black bodies being beaten on TV, like it's become film genre, affects me, annoys me, hurts me. And so when you've got a family of younger children that are saying, Mum, have you heard? Do you know? Oh my gosh. And then when you're presented with a question as, Mum, why do they hate us so much? How do they get away with it so easily? I am now called into action. And I now have to act and respond to the needs of younger voices that do not have an understanding as to what they're witnessing on TV. And like Kimberly and I have discussed before, it was like the new film style, they call it Verti. It's the whole concept of truthful cinema. And lo and behold, I'm watching this and I can't believe it, because when I see people running away, the images that you've seen in the past with the young boy with the Skittles, from the girl that is in her house with her husband, and, all of the images that we have witnessed and seen, this one was one that hit home, because it was the casualness. It was seeing such a large person, guy, tall, under the feet of a police officer, so casually in broad daylight with people standing around, and I'm hearing, Mom, Mom. And that rips it. It rips my heart open, because that's my dad, my brother, my nephew, my cousins, my children's partners of whoever, friends and family. And so suddenly my despair had to turn into, how do I address this consciously in an appropriate way for children to understand, who are asking questions that are requiring answers within the context of, why do they feel that they can get away with it? And why do they hate us so much? when we are so loving and giving and forgiving. And that's coming from the mouths of children. And then we have to respond. And so I remember that day, which was a few days on, because I said, oh, not another one. And I then had to respond and watch it because my children are witnessing it. And then I responded appropriately. Oh, sorry about that. So my emotions shifted from anger, frustration, it's enough. Is this going to be something, yet another one? But yet then I ended up with, I will not see this become a fashion trend or a phase or a fashionable debate. And then came the demonstrations. And then I said, okay, we can make this be a significant loss where we need to call to action, but it took the world to do that. And that also has a kind of mixed emotions because it took the other world to see it when we've been kind of saying it from years back. So it was quite mixed emotions. And so like Michael suggested, the Rodney King, I were too from UK in school, watching the beating of black bodies and the disregard for human life. And I think the COVID pandemic made everybody pause. And in the stillness of time, we saw life because we were in it together.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you for having me to answer then the question that Kimberly has asked about where was I? I was at home. I think the whole world was on lockdown at that time. I was shocked, appalled. It took me all the way back to 20 years ago when Rodney King was beaten so savagely, but it was on film, just like George Floyd. It really hurt seeing both him killed. I still haven't watched the video. I doubt I ever will. But it just took me all the way back. I'm still traumatized by Rodney King. So that's essentially where I was last year, in my home with my family, witnessing someone, an innocent really, be murdered by law enforcement. It just should never have happened.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. And she's like, what's wrong with you? And I said, I just stared in the eyes of the devil. I didn't know the story. I didn't know who the man was on the ground, but I responded immediately to the look on the still from in this man's eyes. And that look shook me to the core. To the core. Over the course of the remainder of the day, I caught glimpses and snippets of what had happened and pieced together the story, having, to this day, I've never watched the video. And I haven't watched simply because I know the limit of my capacity. I know how much I can bear. And it's just too much for me. I was reeling at that point just a week before, doing all sorts of things in regards to Ahmaud Arbery, who was murdered while jogging. And then Breonna Taylor a couple of weeks before that. And I'm like, what's happening? Why are all these people dying? And not, I mean, it's bad enough we're in the midst of the coronavirus and people are dying in droves, but these people are being murdered, are being chased down in the street or shot dead in their living room, or crushed under the knee of this white devil. What is happening? And that day, as things were unfolding and as I heard the cry of this great man, and by great, I mean he's a big, strong, strapping fella, crying out for his mama in the street, it disturbed me to the core. And the more it disturbed me, and the more the reflection of that white devil's eyes kept circulating in my head, I was like, no, this is awful. This cannot, it literally cannot be sustained. This momentum of the murder and complete disregard of Black lives, it cannot be sustained. Something's got to give. That was me. My first moments with that horror.
I really love affirmations. They're positive statements to help counter negative or unsupportive thoughts. And navigating the world in a Black body, in a world that tells you that you're not enough, you don't matter, your voice doesn't matter, your life doesn't matter. Creating that, little piece of that world, that little safe space for myself, and reciting these affirmations helps me from day to day. Sometimes the magnitude of the pain and suffering and of the atrocities that happen on a daily basis weighs on me. And reciting affirmations helps me to get up and to be able to show up and contribute what I can to making this world a better place for all who are living here presently. I have children. For them, that whole concept of 7 generations forward and 7 generations back when you are healing yourself.
Yes.
With that being said, please get into a comfortable position, shift whatever you need to, whatever feels good to you, please do that. You have the option to close your eyes or to lower your gaze, completely up to you. And if at any point during this meditation you feel uncomfortable or you want to stop, feel free. You can just sit back and observe. Okay. It doesn't matter which hand goes where, but, and this is also optional. You can put one hand over your chest, another one over your abdomen. I'm going to recite an affirmation, and you have the option to repeat them quietly to yourself, or you can say them out loud. And after every affirmation, we are going to take a breath in through the nose and open mouth exhale. So breathe out through your mouth. Okay. I am safe at this moment.
I am safe at this moment.
I am worthy of respect and equality. My truth is my truth, and I will speak it even if my voice shakes. My life matters. I matter. I am giving myself permission to experience the full range of my emotions. The rage, happiness, sadness, joy, grief, peace. I am choosing to focus on the things that are within my control. I am greater than my circumstances. I am a compassionate human being, deserving of love, safety, and belonging. I am releasing anything and everything that no longer serve me. I am healthy and whole. I am being divinely supported and guided. I trust myself and the innate wisdom that resides within. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and return to the room. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Nikki. As always. As always. Thank you for closing that out.